Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's start by taking a look at the day's headlines. Time for a new approach. North Korea's envoy to the UN says a change of attitude from the US could lead to an agreement on the regime's nuclear weapons program. The ambassador also uses the opportunity to take a verbal potshot against Seoul. South Korea prepares to mark its 71st Armed Forces Day in the southeastern city of Daegu. Among the highlights will be the introduction of South Korea's newly purchased F-35A stealth fighter jets. Plus, angry anti-China protests are expected in Hong Kong as Beijing marks the 70th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party taking the reins of power in China. Our top story this morning, North Korea's ambassador to the UN is urging the United States to come to the upcoming denuclearization negotiations with a new proposal that would be acceptable to Pyongyang. Speaking at the UN General Assembly in New York on Monday, the envoy said it's up to Washington to turn any future talks into a window of opportunity or an occasion that will hasten the crisis. Our Lee Seung-jae starts us off.
On the final day of the annual gathering of world leaders at the United Nations on Monday, North Korea's ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, called for the full implementation of the statement issued by the leaders of North Korea and the US after their first summit in Singapore last year.
The relations between the DPRK and the US have made little progress so far, and the situation on the Korean Peninsula has not come out of the vicious cycle of increased tension, which is entirely attributable to the political and military provocations perpetrated by the US.
Kim says it's up to Washington to turn any future nuclear talks into a window of opportunity or an occasion that will hasten the crisis. And in order to improve the chance of striking a nuclear deal, he said Washington needs to come to nuclear talks with a new proposal.
Comrade Kim Jong-un, chairman of the State Affairs Commission, in his historical policy speech stated the position that there was a need for the U.S. to put aside its current method of calculation and approach us with a new one, and we wait with patience for a courageous decision from the U.S.
Last month, Pyongyang expressed its willingness to resume working-level talks in late September, saying it believes the U.S. will come up with a mutually acceptable proposal. However, last week, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told reporters that no meetings had been scheduled, but the U.S. stands ready to restart talks anytime. The North Korean envoy also criticized the South Korean government, accusing it of double-dealing. He said Seoul entered into inter-Korean agreements last year only to deploy ultra-modern U.S. weapons and hold joint military exercises with Washington this year.
It is attributable to the double-dealing behavior of the South Korean authorities, who performed the act of a handshake of peace before all, but behind the scenes introduced ultra-modern offensive weapons and held joint military exercise with the United States, targeting the DPRK.
Despite earlier speculation that the UN gathering could set the stage for high-level talks between Pompeo and his North Korean counterpart Lee Yong-ho, Lee was absent this year after being present at the previous 3 UN events. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Former US National Security Advisor John Bolton claims North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will never voluntarily give up his nuclear weapons arsenal, at least under the current circumstances. Speaking at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington on Monday, Bolton said the North Korean leader is doing whatever he can to keep his regime's nuclear weapons capability and to develop and enhance it even further. Bolton added that nuclear weapons are Kim's bargaining chip to get relief from international sanctions. Bolton, who is well known for his hawkish foreign policy views, was blamed by President Trump for hurting negotiations with North Korea and was fired last month. South Korea is planning to showcase its F-35A stealth fighters to the public for the very first time during this morning's 71st Armed Forces Day ceremony in the southeastern city of Daegu. The fifth-generation jet will be introduced during a ceremonial flyby at the Air Force's 11th Fighter Wing Base. Other military assets, such as F-15K jets and Apache helicopters, will also make an appearance at the event, which is aimed at showing off South Korea's military prowess. The event, too, will mark the first time that an Armed Forces Day ceremony has been held at an Air Combat Command. Arirang TV, the channel you are watching right now, will have live coverage of the ceremony from 10:35 a.m. Korea time. The countdown is on towards denuclearization and an era of lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula, and this opportunity should not slip through our fingers. That was the message put out by President Moon Jae-in on Monday as he marked the launch of the 19th National Unification Advisory Council here in Seoul. Our Park Hee-jun with the details.
President Moon Jae-in says the peace and denuclearization process on the Korean Peninsula is gaining momentum. And that calls for wisdom and determination to seize this opportunity.
한반도의 비핵화와 항구적 평화의 시대를 가리키는 시계가 다시 움직이고 있습니다. 제3차 북미 정상회담을 준비하기 위한 북미 간 실무 협상을 위한 발걸음이 바빠지고 있습니다.
These were the president's remarks during an inauguration ceremony for the 19th National Unification Advisory Council at the Blue House on Monday. The council is a presidential body for the peaceful reunification of the two Koreas, with 19,000 members across 124 countries. President Moon asked the council to support its efforts to establish peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. That includes turning the demilitarized zone into a global peace zone to kickstart a peace economy, a vision he unveiled during his keynote speech at the UN General Assembly last week. According to Moon, this is a measure that can help build mutual trust and security guarantees between the two Koreas.
국제 평화지대로 변모하는 비무장지대 인근 접경 지역은 국제적 경제 특구를 만들어 본격적인 평화 경제의 시대를 열어갈 수 있을 것입니다.
President Moon also asked for the council's backing for the two Koreas' joint bid to co-host the 2032 Summer Olympics. The International Olympic Committee reaffirmed its support for the joint games when President Moon met with IOC head Thomas Bach on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. If realized, Moon says the Olympics would be an event that proclaims South and North Korea's cooperation and unity to the rest of the world. These are President Moon's first remarks on the peace process since he returned from the UN General Assembly last week. With things finally moving again, he'll be upping his efforts to achieve concrete results that can help persuade North Korea to denuclearize. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, the World Trade Organization has sided with South Korea over its dispute over anti-dumping duties on Japanese pneumatic valves. The WTO adopted a report on Monday that South Korea's anti-dumping duties against Japan do not violate WTO rules. Japanese pneumatic valves, which are used in the auto industry and electronic sectors, account for 70% of total pneumatic valves imported to South Korea. In 2015, South Korea decided to impose anti-dumping duties on these products over the course of 5 years. In 2016, Japan challenged the measure at the WTO's dispute settlement body. Now, unfortunately, September was another month to forget on the trade front for South Korea. The Trade Ministry says outbound shipments plunged 11.7% on year last month to around $44.7 billion. The nation's exports have been constantly declining each and every month since December 2018. The volume of semiconductor and petrochemical exports increased, but their falling prices contributed to the the overall decrease in September. South Korea's exports to Japan went down close to 6% on year as the neighbours remain locked in a trade spat. Imports slumped 5.6% on year to some $38.7 billion. However, there was one bright spark. The trade surplus for September was the highest so far this year at $5.9 billion. Now, South Korea finally further enhanced its already heady reputation as a powerhouse of women's golf on Monday, with South Korean golfers taking up the top 3 spots in the latest world rankings. LPGA rookie sensation Lee Jung-eun moved up a spot to reach a career-high number 3, while Go Jin-young, who has lifted 4 LPGA trophies this season alone, remained as world number 1 for the 10th week in a row, followed by Park Sung-hyun at number 2. The rankings system, which evaluates performances over a rolling 2-year period, was introduced in 2006, and this is the first time that 3 golfers from the same country have occupied the top 3 places. South Korean golfers have a combined 13 victories in 26 LPGA tournaments so far in 2019. These days, as many women as men, if not more, pursue successful careers in South Korea and a great many other developed countries around the world. However, without the tireless work done by the so-called female first up to a century ago, the level of equality in employment that both men and women enjoy today might never have been possible. Our Kim Bo-kyung takes a closer look at some of the trailblazers here in South Korea who helped to mold a fairer society.
In traditional times, women would usually support their families and consider that the best way to contribute to society. However, as modern culture swept Korea, women were also encouraged to take part in economic activities, and this led to the emergence of what is being dubbed female firsts. To show how women have worked tirelessly to realize their dreams for 100 years in South Korea, the National Women's History Exhibition opened a special exhibition on Monday named Women Go Out into the World. The exhibition features photos, videos, and relics showing how women's jobs changed from 1890 to 1990. Special guests, who attained the number 1 title in their respective fields, attended the ceremony to share their stories. Kim Mal-nyeol was the first woman in Korea to become a paper hanger in 1970s, when paper hangers were exclusively males due to them generally being taller. Although she was a short woman who had trouble papering high ceilings, she never gave up and started climbing a wardrobe to paper them. Lee Deok-kun followed her father's footsteps to become a barber, and out of 31 candidates who passed the first qualifying test, she was the first woman to do so. To this day, she's still working as a barber in her old shop.
I was able to do my job all these years because I take pride in myself and I believe my work is the most important. No other work or technique is more important than mine.
The first female pilot in the South Korean Air Force, Kim Kyung-oh, who actually fought during the Korean War, was also there, donating her uniform to the exhibition. Many of these so-called number 1s in their respective fields paved the way for women in this generation to chase their own dreams whatever the odds. However, there are still issues that have to be resolved in South Korea for greater gender equality in employment.
Women's labor and its worth needs to be fully acknowledged. Only then can our society get better.
In South Korea, long-entrenched norms remain difficult to shake. There's still enormous pressure on women to become a housewife after giving birth, and working conditions for women still need to be brought up to speed, especially for temporary and part-time workers.
By retracing the stories of these women who broke down boundaries, we can get an insight into how to solve remaining issues of gender inequality. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Now, today, October 1st, marks the 70th anniversary of the founding of China's Communist Party. And Beijing is celebrating with fireworks and perhaps much more importantly to people watching around the world, its biggest military parade yet. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Kim Dami. So, Dami, tell us more about this show of military might by Beijing.
Right, Mark, Beijing is right now throwing a huge celebration to commemorate 7 decades of communist power. Various events from citizen parades to fireworks are expected to keep the festive mode, but the highlight is the massive military parade through central Beijing and Tiananmen Square. In front of officials, select members of the public, and 188 military attaches from 97 countries, China is showing off more than 160 aircraft and 580 pieces of weaponry and equipment. And all eyes are on Dongfang 41, the country's newest and the most powerful nuclear missile. The super nuke is said to have the furthest range of any nuclear missile and could reach the U.S. within just 30 minutes. In fact, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has confirmed that the latest weapon is designed to target the U.S. As part of celebrations last Sunday, Chinese leader Xi Jinping presented medals to heroes and foreign friends at a ceremony. These commemorative events are seen as part of President Xi's efforts to solidify his absolute power amid prolonged trade tensions with the U.S. and the ongoing unrest in Hong Kong. In a letter to the Chinese leader, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un also congratulated Beijing, promising to stay strong and thrive through socialism. Meanwhile, there will be another mass march on Tuesday afternoon in Hong Kong, which will be staunchly against China. Despite police in Hong Kong banning demonstrations, pro-democracy protesters have pledged to hit the streets en masse, clad in all black. Amid the tensions, the traditional fireworks show in Hong Kong has been cancelled, as most watchers expect to see the standoff turn violent, especially if police attempt to put down the protests. Tensions between U.S. President Donald Trump and Democrats are reaching fever pitch as the Ukraine scandal intensifies, with Trump firing the latest salvo, calling for the Democratic chairman of the House Intelligence Committee to be charged with treason. President Trump tweeted on Monday that Adam Schiff illegally made up a fake and terrible statement during a congressional hearing, adding arrest for treason. Schiff called President Trump's phone talk with Ukraine's new leader as a classic organized crime shakedown at a hearing last week. In addition, according to the Wall Street Journal, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo listened to the phone call between Trump and Ukraine's leader, which could intensify scrutiny of the State Department's involvement in the scandal.
Now it's time for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information we do hope will be useful for your everyday life. And today we're going to start with sandwiches. They are, of course, a popular choice for many when they need something quick, on the go, and something to fill them up. However, a study of sandwiches on the market shows, in fact, that they don't contain enough calories or carbohydrates to be a nutritionally balanced meal. Park Se-young has this report.
Sandwiches are a simple and filling meal option. They're especially popular among single-person households.
They're easy to eat when busy, lighter than a meal of rice, and can be carried easily, so I eat them a lot.
According to a study of 8 popular sandwiches by the Korea Consumer Agency, all of them tested safe for microorganisms, preservatives, and alien substances. But in terms of nutrition, the sandwiches were too low in carbohydrates and too high in sodium to be sufficient as a meal. Based on the daily recommended intake of nutrients, sandwiches accounted for an average 19% of our recommended intake of calories, 12% of carbohydrates, 27% of protein, 33% of fats, 7% of sugars, and 42% of our daily recommended intake of sodium. When eating a sandwich, people need to eat vegetables, fruits, and dairy products to make up for the missing nutrients.
Due to reasons like weight loss, sandwiches are quite low in calories and carbohydrates, but you must watch out for nutritional imbalance.
In the study, the Korea Consumer Agency found 1 product with poor ingredients and 3 products that were different from their nutrition labels. The agency told the manufacturers to improve those issues. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
Now, great news for everyone living here in South Korea because the country has announced its strongest policies yet to reduce levels of fine dust. The National Council on Climate and Air Quality has outlined 21 measures giving the issue extra attention, especially from December through March, when fine dust levels are at their highest. They include stricter bans on old diesel cars in cities, reducing the operation of coal power plants, and cracking down on illegal trash burning in rural areas. From November, the plan should help reduce fine dust emissions by 20% from last year's levels. The South Korean government is going to help small businesses affected by the boycott of Japanese products get loans worth more than $90 million. The Ministry of SMEs and Startups says starting this month, about $58 million in government-backed loans will go to the tourism sector, enabling businesses to borrow up to about $580,000 each. They'll get a discount on the fee they pay for the guarantee, and they can repay the loans over 7 years. Guaranteed loans worth about $8.3 million will go to other businesses that sell Japanese products like restaurants and supermarkets.
Good morning. The 18th typhoon of the season, Mitag, continues to travel in a northwest direction. It's going to hit Bokpo in Jeollanam-do province on Thursday morning and pass through the southern parts of the country before departing into the East Sea. And for today, Jeju will see 30 to 80 millimeters of rainfall, and it's going to be a lot heavier on mountainous regions on Jeju Island, while southern coastal regions could see 10 to 50 millimeters. And as the typhoon approaches, rain will spread nationwide starting Wednesday. In Gangwon-do province, we'll see rain at the end of the week. Typhoon Mitag will bring heavy showers and strong gusts. Jeju and southern coastal regions could see downpours into Thursday, while wind speeds of up to 35 to 45 meters per second in west and south coast as well as Jeju Island. And temperature-wise for today, upper regions will be as warm as yesterday, but southern parts of the country will see showers along with cooler temperatures. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV as our coverage of South Korea's 71st Armed Forces Day ceremony will be coming up live right here on Arirang TV in around 10 minutes' time. It's usually a good show. So until next time, goodbye.
Nghe chạy từ từ không ngã đây. Vâng. Chào cha chú. Minh đi học cẩn thận nhá.